The sound of clinking crystal and soft jazz drifted through the open French doors of the Davenport house, mingling with the scent of blooming gardenias and old money. The annual Savannah Heritage Society Gala was in full swing, a carefully curated dance of grace gossip and grand donations. Everyone who mattered in the city was there, or hoped to be seen. Calvin Delacroix stood near the bar Bourbon, in hand-tailored midnight blue tux, perfectly sculpted to his tall frame. A quiet force in the room, his presence carried weight without words. Third-generation real estate mogul, head of Delacroix Holdings, Billionaire by his early 30s. People said he had the Midas touch. Buildings bore his name. Boards waited for his nod. But in the midst of all the glitter and glow, Calvin felt only the dull ache of detachment. Across the ballroom, socialites laughed too loudly. A councilman made his rounds fishing for funding. A young woman in sequins whispered something bold into a man's ear, her eyes flicking toward Calvin as if testing to see if the rumor was true, that he was single, cold, and unapproachable. They weren't wrong. He gave them nothing but silence and a practiced smile. "Don't look so thrilled to be here," Carmen teased at his side. She sipped her champagne, slowly adjusting her earrings without looking up. You'd think a man whose name is on the event banner might manage something warmer than a glacier stare. Calvin offered a light chuckle, more out of courtesy than humor. Carmen was everything Savannah wasn't: sharp, fast-talking New York through and through. She had arrived in his life like a sudden gust of wind, refreshing, distracting, and occasionally exhausting. "I'm present," he said. "Barely," she replied. "You've checked your watch 4 times since we got here." "What is it? One of your towers on fire?" "No," he murmured. "Just tired." That wasn't true, not exactly. He wasn't tired in the usual sense. He was worn down in the way a man gets when he's been running from something too long to remember why he started. Claire Delacroix approached then, her signature Chanel scent, arriving a half-second before she did. Impeccable as always, pearls posture and quiet disapproval. Calvin straightened reflexively, the way children do around a parent who once controlled the air they breathed. "Darling," she said, kissing his cheek without smudging her lipstick. "Your table is being photographed. You might want to grace it." "I'll be there in a moment," Calvin replied. "Carmen, you remember my mother?" Claire nodded, tight-lipped. "Of course. Lovely to see you again." Carmen smiled politely. "Always a pleasure." Claire didn't stay long. She drifted off toward a cluster of donors, leaving a faint chill in her wake. Calvin's jaw tightened. "Family vibes are off the charts," Carmen quipped, draining her glass. He didn't answer. His eyes had caught someone through the shimmer of candlelight and silk gowns. A woman had just entered with 3 small boys beside her. She wasn't on the guest list. He would have known. Her hair was pinned in a low twist, her dress a deep emerald that caught the light and made her skin glow like polished mahogany. She held herself with quiet dignity, not dressed to compete, but still impossible to ignore. It hit him all at once. Monica. Every sound in the room muted, every breath caught in his chest. He hadn't seen her in nearly 5 years, his feet locked to the marble floor, the glass in his hand tipped slightly before he steadied it. Carmen followed his gaze. "Who's that?" He didn't speak. Because next to Monica were 3 boys no older than 4 triplets, identical in size, all with skin the color of sun-warmed chestnut, and eyes that made the floor shift beneath him. Gray-blue, his mother's eyes, his own. The bourbon burned on its way down. "You all right?" Carmen's voice was suddenly far away. He didn't answer. Because in that exact moment, Monica turned. Their eyes met. She froze. Just a flicker. Her posture straightened, her lips parting. The years between them collapsed in an instant, replaced by the same stunned silence, like both had been holding their breath for years without knowing it. One of the boys tugged gently at her dress. She bent down, whispered something, then stood her hand resting protectively on the nearest shoulder. The boys looked across the room. One pointed. All three stared. Calvin's chest tightened. He saw it again. His own childhood photos echoed in their faces, the tilt of the chin, the curve of the nose, the slight downturn at the corners of the mouth when curious. There was no room for doubt. He stepped forward, unaware he was even moving. Monica saw him. Her hand tensed on the boy's shoulder. A flicker of panic crossed her face. Not fear, but something harder to define. Grief or guilt. Or maybe the exhaustion of knowing something inevitable had finally arrived. She turned swiftly, but gracefully, ushering the children toward the far corridor where the coat-room sat. Not hurried, but firm. Intent on escape. Monica. The word slipped from his throat before he could catch it. Carmen blinked. Wait, that's your ex-wife. He didn't answer. He handed her his untouched bourbon and moved fast, threading through the crowd. Voices swirled around him. Music changed. Waiters passed. But Calvin heard nothing but the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. He had always imagined this moment would come with anger, with accusations, with questions flung like knives. Instead it was silence. Crippling silence. Monica had reached the exit. She bent to zip one boy's jacket. Another began to complain about his shoes. The third hugged her leg, still watching Calvin from over her hip. He stopped just a few feet away. Monica, he said, breath-catching. Wait. She stood slowly. The years had changed her, yes, but not in ways that dulled her. If anything, she seemed more fully herself, calmer, stronger, like a woman who had learned how to weather storms and still walk forward. We shouldn't do this here, she said quietly. Her voice was calm, but guarded. He took in the boys again. One of them was now picking at a candy wrapper from the table near the wall, oblivious. Another rubbed his eyes. The last stood straight, watching him. I just need to know, Calvin said. His voice cracked. Are they? She didn't blink, didn't flinch. They're mine, she said. Then, after a pause, added, all three. It wasn't an answer, and it was everything he needed to hear. His hand dropped to his side. For a long moment he said nothing. Monica looked down at her boys. It's late. They need rest. He nodded slowly, dazed. Of course. She turned to go. The children clustered around her like petals to a stem. As the door closed behind them, Calvin stood motionless in the hallway, breath-shallow heart unraveling. He had walked into the gala thinking he had mastered every corner of his life. And now, standing in his polished shoes in the home of his city's most elite tradition, he realized he didn't know the first thing about what mattered. 3 children. A woman he never stopped loving. 5 years of silence, and a truth that had waited patiently to be spoken. The music played on behind him, elegant and detached. Calvin didn't move. Not yet. Because nothing about his life, his money, his buildings, his perfect image could touch what had just slipped through that door. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The air outside the gala was cooler than Monica expected, a breeze weaving through the live oaks and Spanish moss that hung like whispers in the dark. Her heels clicked softly along the stone path as she guided her boys toward the valet station. Their little hands clung to her dress, tired now, eyelids drooping after a night full of lights and new faces. She kept her smile steady for them, though inside she was reeling. She had seen him, Calvin, and he had seen them. All 3 of them. Her heart hadn't stopped pounding since their eyes met across that room. It was like walking into a dream she thought she'd buried, or worse, one that never stopped haunting her. Mommy Miles mumbled, tugging at her hand. "Can we get pancakes tomorrow?" Monica blinked down at him, startled by the innocence of it. "Sure, baby. We'll do pancakes. Chocolate chips," Isaiah added hopefully, peering up with those wide gray-blue eyes, the ones that didn't just look like Calvin's but were his. Every time she saw them, she wondered if she'd made the right decision all those years ago. To raise them alone. To protect them by keeping him out. She smoothed a hand over Isaiah's curls. "We'll see. Let's get home first." A valet in a bow tie jogged up with her SUV. Monica opened the back and began buckling the boys into their seats with familiar, practiced ease. Her mind, however, was a hurricane. Calvin had followed her, spoken her name, asked the question she'd dreaded for years. Are they mine? She had given him the only answer she could in that moment, vague, evasive, true, but incomplete, because she wasn't ready. Not yet. Not here. Not in a ballroom full of judgmental eyes, and his mother just steps away. She slid into the driver's seat, shut the door gently, and took one long, deep breath. "You okay, Mama came?" Noah's sleepy voice from behind her. She turned and smiled softly at him through the rearview mirror. "Yeah, sweetheart. Just thinking. Was that man your friend?" he asked. Monica's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Not exactly," she said. "He's someone from before. Before the diapers and the midnight feedings. Before she became a woman who lived in a rented townhouse and juggled grant deadlines and fielded every fever and scraped knee alone. Before she learned how to quiet her heartbreak with purpose. Back when she thought love was enough." The next morning, Monica stood at the kitchen counter flipping pancakes as sunlight spilled through the window. The boys were at the table, sleep-rumpled, and still giggling about syrup mustaches. But her mind wasn't with the pancakes. It was with Calvin's face, how stunned he had looked. How still, like he'd seen ghosts wearing bow ties and dress shoes. He hadn't known. That much was clear. She had imagined this moment 100 different ways over the past 5 years. In every version she was composed, calm, unshaken. But last night proved the truth. She wasn't. She heard the front door open and close. "Hey," called a familiar voice from the hall. "Smells like carbs," Monica smiled in spite of herself. Dr. Lena Moreau, pediatrician, best friend, occasional therapist, and one of the few people who knew the whole story. "In here?" Monica called back. Lena stepped into the kitchen in jeans and sneakers, her curly hair pulled up and a tote bag slung over one shoulder. "I brought those books you wanted for the literacy drive," she said, setting them on the counter. Then she looked at Monica's face. "Okay, what happened?" Monica slid a pancake onto a plate. "You're going to need coffee for this." Lena raised an eyebrow. "That bad worse." She poured 2 cups while the boys continued their pancake chatter. Then she motioned toward the back porch. Lena followed. Once they were outside, Monica shut the door and leaned against the railing. "He was there," she said. Lena didn't have to ask who. Calvin Monica nodded. "At the gala, alone with a date. But he saw me, and he saw the boys." Lena's eyebrows rose slowly, her sharp eyes scanning Monica's face. "And he came after us. He asked me straight up if they were his. And you said—" Monica looked away. I didn't answer. Lena didn't speak for a long moment. Then Mon. "I know," she whispered. "I know. But I couldn't. Not there. Not with his mother in the next room. Not in front of the kids." Lena softened. "Okay. Fair. But this is it, isn't it? The secret's out." Monica nodded, the weight of it settling like lead in her chest. I think I saw a part of him last night that I haven't seen in a long time, she said quietly. He looked gutted. Lena sipped her coffee, watching her. And what about you? She asked. How did you feel? Monica swallowed hard. Like I was standing on the edge of something, and one step in either direction could change everything. Lena set her mug down gently. Then maybe it's time to stop standing still. Across town, Calvin sat at the long oak table in his penthouse untouched breakfast in front of him. He stared out over the rooftops of Savannah, but his mind was replaying the same moment on loop. Monica turning those 3 boys at her side, and the unmistakable shock of recognition that had knocked the breath from his lungs. He hadn't slept. Carmen had texted twice, but he hadn't replied. For once, business wasn't calling his name. No deals to review, no contracts to sign. The only thing that mattered now was the past he hadn't known existed, and the future he might already be too late for. He stood and walked into his office, pulled open the drawer where he kept old letters and photos, and found it. A wedding photo. He and Monica standing under a flowering dogwood, smiling like the world hadn't yet tested them. She looked radiant, strong, unafraid. And he looked like a man who didn't know how easily love could slip through his fingers. He ran a hand over his jaw. 5 years. And in that time he had chased towers, trophies, headlines, anything but what truly mattered. He pressed the photo back into the drawer and closed it. Then he picked up his phone. He didn't know what he would say yet. But one thing was certain. He wasn't letting her walk away again without answers. Not this time. Late afternoon light stretched across the windows of Delacroix Holdings, gilding the marble floors in a warm glow. Calvin sat in his office elbow, propped on the armrest of his leather chair, fingers pressed to his temple. The hum of Savannah moved faintly outside distant horns, the low rumble of cars, but inside time was suspended. The folder on his desk had been there since morning. 3 pages. Basic professional. A public profile for Monica Price. Current occupation Executive Director, Magnolia Haven Family Center. Opened 3 years ago. Staff of 9. Focused on underserved families, primarily single mothers and children. A single line near the bottom made his chest ache. Personal mother to 3 sons. Names undisclosed. He leaned back, eyes unfocused. He still didn't know their names. How did that happen? How had 5 entire years passed without him knowing 3 pieces of his own soul were breathing in the same city he should have known? He should have fought harder back then, asked more questions, paid attention. Instead, he'd buried himself in glass towers and boardrooms, pretending work could distract him from the truth he didn't want to face, that he'd let her walk away without stopping her. That he'd let his mother's silence speak louder than his own voice. A soft knock pulled him out of his thoughts. His assistant, Kelly, peeked in. "Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Delacroix, but there's someone here asking to see you. She didn't have an appointment, but..." She said her name is Carmen. Calvin exhaled through his nose. "Send her in." A moment later, Carmen swept in, heels tapping blazer-flawless hair pulled into a sleek knot. She wore the same expression she always did when she wanted something charming, a little impatient, and just sharp enough to sting. "You've been avoiding me," she said without preamble, closing the door behind her. Calvin gestured to the seat across from him. Not avoiding, just reprioritizing. That sounds like a billionaire's way of saying, "I ghosted you." He gave a tight smile, then stood and walked to the window, letting the light catch the edge of his expression. Carmen sighed and sat down. "You want to talk about it?" He turned slowly. "You saw her. At the gala." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "The woman with the boys." "Monica," he said softly. "My ex-wife." Carmen crossed one leg over the other, her tone careful now. "And the boys, He nodded once. She let that sit in the air for a beat. So, what happens now, I don't know, he admitted. I'm still catching up to the reality of it, still trying to understand what it means. She tilted her head. Do you love her? Calvin looked down. It's not that simple. It never is, she said, standing. For what it's worth, I'm not mad. You were never fully here. Now I know why. He looked up, surprised. You're just letting go, she gave a small shrug. I came to Savannah looking for something exciting. I found complicated. That's not what I signed up for. There was a moment of quiet. Then Calvin nodded. Fair enough. At the door, Carmen paused. She looked strong, by the way. That woman. Beautiful, too. Calvin smiled faintly. Yeah. She always was. And then Carmen was gone. Across town, Monica stood in the break room of Magnolia Haven, leaning against the counter as Lena poured tea. You haven't heard from him? Lena asked, handing her the cup. No, Monica replied, blowing on the steam. But he will. He's not the kind of man who lets things go once they're in front of him. Lena raised an eyebrow. And what are you going to do when he comes knocking? Monica hesitated. I don't know yet. You're not the same woman who left him, I know, Monica said. But I also know what it felt like to sit alone in a doctor's office, hearing I was carrying 3 children, and realizing the man I loved wouldn't pick up the phone. Lena's voice softened. You didn't tell him? Monica looked at her friend, voice barely above a whisper. Because he didn't fight for me, Lena. He didn't fight when his mother tried to erase me from their world. He didn't fight when I needed him to stand beside me. And I couldn't bring 3 black sons into a family that only ever saw me as a scandal. Lena's eyes glistened. You protected them. You did what you had to do. Monica swallowed hard, nodding. The front bell of the center rang. Lena gave her a look and walked out to check. Moments later, Lena's voice floated back in. It's for you. Monica stepped out into the small, sunlit lobby and froze. Calvin stood there holding a large box wrapped in brown paper. He looked out of place against the crayon-covered bulletin board and the soft hum of a lullaby from the playroom. His suit was tailored, but his face held none of the polish. Just rawness. And maybe hope. I didn't know what else to do, he said, holding out the box. So I brought books for the center. She looked at the box, then back at him. You didn't need to do that. I wanted to, he said. I want to help. That's not the help I need. He hesitated. Then what do you need? She took a breath, steadying herself. Time, space, honesty. His voice cracked slightly. I didn't know, Monica. If I had, but you didn't. She interrupted gently but firmly. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't show up when it mattered. And now, everything's different. Calvin nodded slowly. I know. And I don't expect anything. I just want to be a part of their lives if you'll let me. Monica studied him. His eyes weren't the same as before. There was no entitlement in them, no assumption, just quiet plea. That scared her more than anger ever could. Come back tomorrow, she said finally. We have story time at 10. You can sit in, nothing more. His shoulders dropped slightly. I'll be here. She turned and walked back toward her office, not daring to look back. But once inside, she sat down, slowly pressed a hand over her heart, and whispered to herself, What are you doing? Because she wasn't sure if she was building a bridge or opening a door she'd spent 5 years trying to keep closed. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The next morning came quietly. The sun filtered through pale curtains in Monica's bedroom, warming the wooden floors and casting soft stripes across the comforter. The boys were already awake, padding down the hallway with toy cars and whisper fights over who got the red one. It was a typical Tuesday morning, except it wasn't. Today, Calvin was coming. She had agreed to it, spoken the words out loud, but now they lingered like mist, unsettling, hard to hold. As she buttoned her blouse and pulled her hair into a low twist, Monica tried to steady her breath. "Mom, can he really come?" Isaiah asked as she walked into the kitchen. She paused. "Who the man from the party?" Noah said, sitting cross-legged on the floor, building a tower from cereal boxes. He looked like us. Monica knelt beside them. Her voice was careful even. He might visit today, just to say hello, that's all. Miles tilted his head. "Is he nice?" She hesitated. "He used to be." Isaiah blinked slowly. "Is he our dad?" The words dropped like pebbles into still water, sending ripples that reached straight through her chest. She placed a hand gently on his back. "That's a big question, baby. Let's take it one day at a time." They nodded, trusting her the way only children could, then returned to their cereal tower, like nothing had changed. But everything had. By 10 o'clock, the kids were settled in the story circle with their friends' crayons in hand and picture books spread across their laps. Lena stood near the doorway with a clipboard, offering Monica a tight smile. "You sure you're okay with this?" she asked quietly. "I'm not sure about anything," Monica whispered. "But they deserve to meet him." "And you?" Monica looked out across the room where the boys were now giggling over a book about flying frogs. "I deserve to know who he is now." Then the front door opened. Calvin stepped in dressed in jeans and a button-down rolled at the sleeves. It was casual for him, but still put together. He looked nervous. That in itself felt like a crack in the version of him she used to know. "Hi," he said softly, eyes landing on her first, then flicking to Lena, and finally to the circle of children. Monica nodded. "You're right on time." He stepped forward slowly. "I wasn't sure what to bring, so I got them books." From a canvas tote, he pulled 3 brand-new picture books, hardcovers still wrapped in plastic. He held them out awkwardly, like an offering to an altar he wasn't sure he belonged near. Monica accepted them. "Thank you." That was thoughtful. The children glanced up as he approached. Noah squinted at him, then leaned toward Miles and whispered something. Miles nodded. Isaiah stared without blinking. Monica gestured towards the carpet. "You can sit. Over there." He lowered himself to the floor a little stiffly, placing his hands on his knees, glancing around like a man visiting a foreign country with no map. The kids kept watching him, half curious, half cautious. The teacher began reading a story about a bear who lost his way and found home in the most unexpected place. Calvin listened, but mostly he watched. Every time one of the triplets laughed or leaned forward or pointed at a page, he caught his breath. He was memorizing them even if he didn't realize it. Halfway through the reading, Isaiah crawled closer. Then Miles followed. Noah hung back but watched closely. Calvin kept still, letting them set the pace. Isaiah sat beside him, close, but not touching. "You were at the big party," Isaiah said matter-of-factly. "I was," Calvin replied gently. "You looked scared." Calvin chuckled softly. "I was surprised." "By us?" Miles asked, now sitting cross-legged in front of him. Calvin paused. "Yes, but not in a bad way. Just surprised in a big way." Noah stood now, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. "Mom said we could ask questions." Calvin looked at Monica. She gave a small nod. He turned back to them. "You can ask me anything." Noah took a deep breath. "Are you our dad?" Calvin's heart stopped. He looked at Monica again, eyes wide, searching. She looked back, and this time she didn't rescue him. This was his moment. He swallowed hard, then looked at the boys. "I don't know all the rules for how this works," he said, "but I know I missed a lot of time. And if it's okay with you, I'd like to learn how to be in your lives." The boys didn't respond right away, but something shifted. Miles leaned in a little. Isaiah smiled faintly. Noah walked over and sat beside Calvin's knee, close, but not quite touching. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no. The story ended, and the teacher dismissed the circle. Kids scattered. Laughter returned to the room. But the three boys stayed near Calvin, showing him drawings, flipping through the new books, asking if bears could really ride bicycles. Monica watched from the doorway, arms crossed. Lena stepped beside her. "They like him. They don't know what not to like," yet Monica murmured. "But you do." Monica exhaled. "I don't know if I trust him, but I can see he's trying." Lena touched her arm. "You don't have to forgive everything at once. But letting the door crack open, that's something." They stood there for a moment, watching a man kneel awkwardly on the carpet, holding a book upside down, while three curious boys corrected him with delighted laughter. Calvin looked up then. His eyes found Monica's across the room, and for the first time since the gala, they both let the silence sit not in anger, not in pain, but in something softer. Possibly even hope. As the boys pulled him back into their world of crayons and laughter, Monica turned and walked toward her office. Her pulse still raced, her mind still buzzed with questions. But somewhere deep inside, a knot began to loosen. Because whatever happened next, she was no longer alone in it. The past has a funny way of slipping back in, not with a roar, but a quiet breath you didn't notice until your chest started to tighten. That night, after the boys were tucked in, and their room filled with the slow rhythm of sleep, Monica sat alone in the kitchen. The overhead light buzzed softly. Her untouched tea had gone cold. She didn't move to reheat it. The visit earlier had gone better than she expected, and worse. Watching the boys inch closer to Calvin had tugged at something buried so deep, she wasn't sure she remembered where she left it. And the way he looked at them like he was seeing sunlight after 5 years underground was almost too much to bear. She thought of how Noah had sat next to him. Just like that. No fear. No hesitation. A knock broke through her thoughts. It was late. Too late for guests. She opened the door slowly, and there he was, Calvin standing under the soft porch light, hair a little messy, hands in his pockets, something nervous in his posture that didn't fit the man she used to know. "I didn't mean to bother you this late," he said, "but I didn't want to leave things unfinished." Monica hesitated, then stepped aside. 5 minutes. He walked in quietly. The smell of the house hit him, lavender, a hint of lemon cleaner, and something else he couldn't name, but felt like childhood. Home. She didn't offer him tea. "Say what you came to say," she said, arms crossed. He stood near the counter, avoiding her eyes at first. "Today meant more than I can explain. I didn't expect them to welcome me. I figured they'd look at me like a stranger." "They did," she said softly. "But kids don't carry the same weight we do. They forgive faster. Trust easier." He finally met her eyes. "Do you?" Monica swallowed. "That's not a fair question." "I know," he said, "but I needed to ask." She looked away. "I don't know how to fit you into this life anymore, Calvin. For years I built it without you, on purpose, out of necessity. It was never about punishment. It was about protection." He nodded slowly. "I get that now. Or, I'm starting to." Silence stretched between them, thick and full of things unsaid. She leaned against the sink. "Why didn't you come after me?" The question landed like a pin dropped in a silent room. He looked pained. "Because I didn't know how. Because I was angry. Embarrassed. My pride got in the way. And because I told myself you'd come back when you cooled off. She let out a bitter laugh. You thought I left because I was being emotional? I didn't know, he said quickly. Back then I thought silence was safer than saying the wrong thing. Monica's voice rose tight with years of held-in words. Your mother cornered me in your father's study and told me plain as day that I would never be welcome in the Delacroix family. She said our marriage was a mistake that could still be undone if I left quietly. Calvin's face went pale. But she handed me a check. Told me to go before your name got tangled up with mine in the press. Said the foundation couldn't afford scandal. His fists curled, but he said nothing. I waited, Monica continued, voice trembling. I waited for you to ask why I left, to come after me, to say something. But you never did. And I realized then you might have loved me, but not enough to lose the comfort of your legacy. He took a step closer. Monica, if I had known but you didn't, she interrupted, eyes wet. Because you didn't want to know. Because it was easier not to ask. His voice cracked. I failed you. I see that now. They stood frozen, the kitchen light casting soft shadows against the walls. Her eyes glistened with tears that refused to fall. His chest rose and fell like the tide, slow and heavy. I'm not that man anymore, he said. She looked at him long and hard. You might not be, she said, but I'm not the same woman either, and I don't know if we fit anymore. A beat, then another. I'm not here for us, he said quietly. I mean, I don't know if there's still an us. But I'm here for them. I want to show up for them. Her eyes dropped to the floor. And what if they ask you where you've been? I'll tell them the truth. That I didn't know. That I missed too much. And that I'm trying to make it right, not with gifts, not with gestures, but by showing up. One day at a time. She studied him. You don't get to dip in and out, Calvin. If you want to be part of their lives, it has to be consistent, stable, safe, I know, he said. She sighed and leaned back, rubbing her temples. All right, she said finally. Then we start small. You come by once a week. No big gestures, no press, just real time. He nodded, relief flickering across his face. And no introducing yourself as their father yet, she added. Not until we're ready. That title comes with weight. I understand. They stood there for a long moment, both still surrounded by echoes of everything they once had and all they had to rebuild. Finally, Monica moved toward the door. You should go. He walked to the threshold, then turned. I missed you, he said, voice barely a whisper. More than I knew was possible. She closed her eyes, and without responding, she gently shut the door behind him. Inside, her chest trembled with something she couldn't name. Outside, Calvin stood on the porch for a full minute, staring into the night. Then, for the first time in years, he walked away, not with regret, but with resolve. The following Saturday morning arrived with the kind of golden light that made Savannah feel slower, sweeter, like it had been dipped in honey. Monica sat on the front porch, mug in hand, her bare feet resting on the cool wood steps. Inside, the boys buzzed with anticipation. Isaiah kept peeking out the window. Miles had changed shirts twice. Noah was pretending not to care, but kept asking what time it was. He was coming. Calvin. It would be the first time he was seeing the boys outside the safety net of the center. No story circles, no controlled introductions. Just him, 3 boys, and the unpredictable energy that came with it. Monica wasn't sure who was more nervous, Calvin or herself. She had spent the past few days replaying their kitchen conversation in her head. His apology, her anger, the confession she hadn't realized she was still holding on to like glass shards in her palm. Letting him in again, even just a sliver, felt dangerous. but shutting him out now when he was finally trying felt wrong. The screen door creaked as Lena stepped outside, holding 2 breakfast wraps and a knowing smile. "Peace offering," she said, handing one over. Monica took it gratefully. "Thanks. I didn't eat, I figured." Lena sat beside her, brushing a leaf off the step. "How are you feeling?" Numb Monica admitted. "Tired, hopeful, terrified?" Lena smiled gently. "That's motherhood, babe." They sat in silence for a moment, chewing and sipping until the low rumble of a car rolled up the street. Monica straightened slightly, her breath catching. It was him. Calvin's SUV slowed in front of the house, and he stepped out with a large tote bag slung over one shoulder. He wasn't wearing a suit, just jeans, sneakers, and a soft charcoal Henley shirt that made him look more like a dad from the neighborhood than a billionaire. That alone unsettled her. Lena stood. "I'll give you space." "Stay nearby," Monica asked softly. "Always." The boys had already burst through the door, sneakers half-tied, energy bouncing off the porch rails. Mr. Calvin Miles called out, waving furiously. Calvin laughed, surprised by the welcome. "Hey, buddy, we made cards," Isaiah said, holding out a folded sheet of construction paper dotted with glitter and crayon. "For me," Calvin asked, his voice warm with disbelief. Noah nodded. "We each did one. And I drew a building, like the one you built downtown." Calvin knelt to take the cards, genuinely touched. "I'm gonna frame these. I mean that." Monica watched from the steps, arms folded loosely over her chest, every part of her alert, measuring the way he moved, how he looked at them, how gently he accepted their affection without rushing it. "You ready?" she asked. He looked up at her. "Yeah. I brought some things, snacks, a soccer ball, a few board games. You're not taking them to a yacht, Calvin. It's a backyard. I figured that out." He grinned. "I'm adjusting expectations." Monica smirked, despite herself, and stepped back so they could pass. The backyard was modest but cozy, patchy grass, a small swing set, and an old picnic table covered in chalk drawings. The boys darted ahead, already arguing over teams for soccer. "You okay with me staying?" he asked, walking beside her. "For now," she said. "We'll take it slow." He nodded, then added, "Thanks for trusting me enough to let me be here." "You earned a chance," she said. "Not trust, not yet." That landed. He didn't push further. They reached the edge of the lawn, and Calvin set the bag down, pulling out juice boxes and a worn soccer ball. "Your goalie," Miles shouted. "No way, he's too tall," Isaiah said, tugging Calvin's sleeve. "He's a striker." Calvin laughed. "What's the rule if I trip over my own feet?" "You lose," all three yelled in unison. The game was chaos. Clumsy kicks, accidental goals, shouts of "no fair" and "do over." Calvin ran with them, played rough but fair, let them tackle him without pretending, let himself be messy human out of breath. Monica sat on the porch, arms wrapped around her knees, watching the man she once knew become someone new before her eyes. He wasn't trying to impress them. He was just present. After a while, the boys collapsed onto the grass, panting and laughing. "I'm hungry," Noah announced. Calvin pulled sandwiches from the bag like some suburban magician. "Peanut butter and jelly," he said, "and turkey with cheese." "I guessed." "You guessed right," Miles said, chomping instantly. As they ate, Isaiah leaned against Calvin's arm. "Do you have a backyard like this?" Calvin smiled. "Not like this. I live in a tall building. No grass, just a balcony." "You can't play soccer on a balcony," Noah said. "Nope. You really can't." Monica stepped outside, then carrying a pitcher of lemonade. She poured quietly, watching the way her boys had begun to orbit around Calvin like gravity was slowly shifting. They'd only met him twice, and already they were folding him into their world. She wasn't sure whether to feel proud or scared. As the boys played again, Calvin walked over to her, sweat on his brow, his expression lighter than she'd seen in years. "They're amazing," he said. "I know. You did that. Alone." "I had help," she replied. "Friends, teachers, people who showed up. I should have been one of them. You weren't." A beat of silence passed. "I want to be now," he said. She looked at him, guarded but not cold. "We'll see." "I'm not here for credit," he added. "And I'm not looking for forgiveness like it's something you owe me. But I want to earn your trust, Monica." Slowly. Honestly. "You're not just rebuilding with them," she said. "You're rebuilding with me." "I know." Her voice dropped heavy with truth. "They're still young. If you leave again, you won't just break me. You'll break them," he swallowed. "Then I won't leave." They stood there for a long moment, porch boards warm beneath their feet, the sound of laughter behind them and years of distance between them. Then Isaiah called out, "Mr. Calvin." "You're goalie now." Calvin smiled, turned to go, then paused. "I'm glad you opened the door," he said. "I didn't open it," she replied. "I just stopped locking it." As he jogged back into the game, Monica leaned against the railing, eyes fixed on the man running barefoot across the grass with 3 little boys, who had no idea how close they'd come to never knowing him. She closed her eyes for a second. And for the first time in a long time, hope didn't feel like a risk. It felt like a maybe. A week passed. And then another. Calvin showed up every Saturday, sometimes with sandwiches and juice, other times with new books or a silly science kit he'd found online. But more than what he brought it was how he came. Present, unrushed, patient. He learned the rhythm of the house. He helped tie shoes, wiped sticky hands, and lost every board game they asked him to play, on purpose at first, then not. By the 3rd visit, the boys no longer asked why he was there. They just expected him. Monica noticed. She also noticed the way her heart reacted when he laughed with them, or how her breath caught when his hand brushed hers as he passed her a coffee mug. It wasn't like before, but it wasn't gone either. That scared her. One Tuesday afternoon, after the center had closed and the staff had trickled out, Monica sat at her desk reviewing grant paperwork. The quiet was rare, too rare. And it made the sound of the knock on her office door stand out more. She looked up. Calvin stood there holding a takeaway coffee and wearing a cautious smile. "You're early," she said, glancing at the clock. "Next visit's not until Saturday." "I know," he said, stepping inside. "But I didn't come to see the boys. I came to see you." Monica raised a brow. "I thought we agreed I'm not crossing lines," he said quickly. I wanted to ask you something." She sat back in her chair, arms folded. "Okay." He handed her the coffee and sat across from her. "You've given me this chance to be part of their lives, and I'm grateful. Truly. But I also know I hurt you, Monica. And I've never really said what I should have." She looked down at the coffee lid. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he continued. "I just want to tell you the truth. The full truth. If you'll let me." Monica nodded once, slowly. "Go ahead." He inhaled. "When you left, I shut down. I told myself it was your decision, that I had to respect it. But the truth, I was scared. I didn't know how to fight without making things worse. And a part of me believed I didn't deserve you." She stayed quiet, but her fingers tightened around the cup. "My mother had this way of getting into my head," he said, "telling me I needed to stay focused, that marriage would distract me, that love was a luxury, not a necessity. And I believed her for too long." Monica's voice was low when she finally spoke. "I wasn't a distraction, Calvin. I was your wife." "I know that now," he said. But back then I didn't know how to balance you and the world I was trying to prove myself to. I thought I had to earn my place first, then bring you into it. You didn't have to earn your place, she said. You already had it with me. There was a silence that settled, not heavy, but full. I've spent 5 years building everything I thought I wanted, he said. And now I know none of it means anything if I can't share it. Not just with them, with you. Her eyes flicked up to his. Don't do this, she said gently. Don't make this harder than it already is. I'm not trying to complicate things. Yes, you are. Because now it's not just about you and me. It's about 3 little hearts watching us figure this out. And if we mess this up again, it won't just hurt us. He nodded, swallowing hard. I understand. She leaned forward, her voice softer. I'm not saying there's no chance, but I need to be sure this isn't nostalgia. That it's not guilt or a need to fix the past just because you saw their faces. Calvin met her gaze. It's not guilt, it's clarity. She held his eyes for a moment longer, then looked away. He stood slowly. I'll see you Saturday. She nodded, and he left without another word. But his presence lingered. Later that evening, Monica stood at the kitchen counter slicing strawberries while the boys worked on a school project at the table. Crayons rolled across pages, and Isaiah was trying to spell explorer without vowels. Mom Noah said suddenly, looking up from his worksheet, Is Mr. Calvin going to come to our school play? Monica turned. Do you want him to? Noah shrugged. He makes a lot of faces when we're nervous. It helps. He does, Isaiah agreed. Funny faces. Miles piped up. He said he'd cheer the loudest if we ever played sports. Monica smiled faintly. Well, if you'd like him there, I can invite him. All 3 boys nodded. And that's when she knew the line had blurred. He wasn't just a visitor anymore. He was becoming a presence, a thread woven into their days. That night after the boys had gone to bed, and the house was wrapped in stillness, Monica sat on the couch, looking at an old photo album, one from years ago when she and Calvin were still new, still hopeful, still dreaming. There was a picture of them at Forsyth Park, her head on his shoulder, his eyes squinting in the sunlight, laughing at something she no longer remembered. She touched the edge of the page, her thumb resting over his smile. She didn't want to go back. But she wasn't sure she wanted to shut the door either. The door wasn't locked anymore, and maybe, just maybe, it was starting to open. Savannah's spring came soft and golden, as if the whole city had taken a deep breath and exhaled into bloom. Azaleas lined the sidewalks like painted confetti, and the air was thick with magnolia and warm soil. On a quiet Thursday evening, Monica found herself at the community center later than usual, surrounded by glitter-covered construction paper and the distant hum of a vacuum in the hallway. She wasn't expecting company, which is why she nearly jumped when a familiar voice broke the silence behind her. You always stay this late. Monica looked up from the table where she'd been sorting art supplies. Calvin stood in the doorway holding 2 paper bags and looking like someone who had been rehearsing what to say in the parking lot. She blinked. You're not on the schedule until Saturday. I know. I was driving by and saw the lights on. Figured you hadn't eaten. He lifted the bags. Ty. She hesitated. I'm not sure this is a good idea. I'm not trying to push, he said quickly. Just dinner, as 2 people who used to know each other. A pause. She exhaled. Fine. But if you brought the wrong kind of noodles again, I'm blaming you for the heartburn. He grinned and walked in. They sat across from each other at the small, round table in the corner of her office. The desk pushed aside the overhead light, buzzing softly. The smell of curry and basil filled the space, grounding it in something simple, something human. Boys doing okay? He asked. They are, she said, Noah wrote a poem at school about family. Can I read it? She shook her head but smiled. Not yet. It's personal and messy. He's still figuring out where you fit. I get that, Calvin said. So am I. They ate quietly for a moment. Then Monica looked up. Why now? He blinked. What do you mean, why are you showing up now, Calvin? Why not last year or the year before that? What finally made you decide to come looking? His eyes dropped to the table. I think I always knew I messed up, he said slowly. But knowing and feeling aren't the same. When I saw you at the gala, with them, it broke something open in me. She watched him carefully. I didn't recognize the woman you were, he continued. Not because you were different, but because I'd never bothered to see you fully before. I saw you as what you gave me, what you made easy, what you softened in me. I never saw how much strength it took for you to carry it all. Monica's throat tightened. He looked up. You're still carrying it. Alone. She leaned back slightly, folding her arms. I'm not a martyr, Calvin. I've built a good life, a full one. I don't want to be anyone's project. You're not, he said quickly. I just want to share the weight. Not because I feel guilty, but because I finally want to be the man I should have been back then. A silence settled between them. Not cold, not warm, just honest. I don't know if I can fall back into this, she whispered. Too much happened. I'm not asking you to fall, he said. I'm asking if we can stand, together, start over, not erase what happened, but learn from it. She stared at him. For a moment, she saw the boyish version of him, the one who used to kiss her wrist while she was doing dishes, the one who danced with her in bare feet on their tiny apartment floor. And then, like a flash, she saw the man who disappeared when she needed him most. That version still hurt. Monica, he said softly, I know I broke your heart, but you broke mine too when you left without a word. Her head snapped up. You don't get to say that. Why not? Because you had every chance to stop me, to call, to fight. And you didn't. I was grieving too, he said, voice low. Just differently. She blinked hard. I didn't want to make you choose between me and your family. But when your mother made it clear I wasn't welcome and you said nothing, that was the choice. I regret that silence more than anything he said. If I could go back, but you can't. She cut in, her voice sharper now. You can't rewrite what happened. You can only decide who you're going to be now. He nodded slowly. Then that's what I'm doing. Their eyes locked. Outside, wind whispered through the trees. Somewhere in the hallway, the vacuum clicked off. Why are you really here tonight? She asked again, softer this time. Calvin hesitated. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. I've been holding on to this for a while, he said, sliding it across the table. She stared at it. What is it? My lawyer sent me a draft. Of a co-parenting agreement. It's not official, not legal, just a gesture, a promise. She looked at him stunned. I wanted you to see that I'm not just talking, he said. I'm listening. And I'm willing to meet you where you are. Monica picked up the envelope with trembling hands. She didn't open it. After a moment, she set it aside. Okay, she said quietly. That's a start. Calvin exhaled a tension he hadn't realized he was carrying, loosening in his shoulders. They finished the meal in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet this time. Something softer. Tentative. When he stood to leave, she walked him to the door. At the threshold, he paused. I'll see you Saturday, he said. She nodded. Then as he turned to go, she called after him. Calvin. He stopped, looked back. Next time, bring the noodles with the peanut sauce. He smiled, and for the first time her smile followed his out the door. The center was buzzing with color and laughter that Saturday paint-streaked smocks, juice boxes half drunk, and left on counters and pipe cleaners bent into heroic shapes. Monica moved between tables with her usual grace, but her mind was elsewhere. She hadn't told the boys about the envelope yet. It sat in her desk drawer, unopened. Not because she didn't care, because she cared too much. Calvin's gesture had stirred something deeper than just co-parenting logistics. It made things real, tangible, permanent. And permanence scared her more than anything. She glanced up and caught sight of Calvin through the front windows. He was walking toward the center, balancing a small tray of cupcakes and a folded blanket under his arm, wearing jeans and a navy blue hoodie that made him look years younger. Her heart skipped, then steadied. The boys, as usual, exploded with energy when they saw him. Mr. Calvin Miles darted to the door before Monica could remind him not to yell indoors. Calvin crouched laughing as he was nearly tackled. "I come bearing cupcakes," he said, holding them high above the chaos. "And a challenge who can beat me at Uno today. You always lose." Isaiah grinned. "Exactly why I'm due for a win," Calvin replied, eyes twinkling. Noah hovered by the wall, arms crossed in mock skepticism. "What kind of cupcakes? Red velvet? Cream cheese frosting?" Noah cracked a grin. "You remembered?" Calvin winked. "I always remember." Monica watched them from a distance, chest tight. The boys no longer treated him like a guest. He was someone they expected, someone they wanted to impress, someone they trusted. Lena walked up beside her, sipping iced coffee. "It's weird, isn't it? How fast they let him in?" Monica nodded. "It's not just them. I'm starting to forget what it was like before he came back." Lena raised a brow. "Is that a good thing I don't know yet?" Monica whispered. Later that afternoon, while the boys played outside with a group of other kids, Monica and Calvin found themselves alone at the picnic table under the oak tree behind the center. "You're good with them," she said quietly. "I'm just following their lead," he said. "They let me in. I'm trying not to mess it up." There was a long pause. The sounds of laughter drifted across the yard. "I haven't told them about the agreement," she said. "I figured," he replied. "It's okay. I didn't bring it to pressure you. It's not pressure," she said. "It's just, it feels like a decision we can't undo." Calvin looked at her eyes, steady. "Monica, I'm not going anywhere. Not again. Whether you open that envelope now or in a year, I'll still be here." Her eyes filled with something too complicated to name. "And what about us?" she asked before she could stop herself. "Do you think we're just magically going to find our way back?" He didn't flinch. "No. I think it'll be messy. Slow. Maybe impossible. But I also think the door isn't locked anymore." She smiled faintly. "That's what I told you." "I know," he said. "And I've been standing in that doorway every day since." She shook her head, half amused, half frustrated. "You say the right things now. But back then I said nothing." "I remember." He leaned forward. "And that silence. It taught me how much a word could cost." Her throat tightened. He looked down at his hands. "I still replay that morning. You gone? The closet half empty. No note. Just absence." "I thought it would be easier," she said, her voice cracking. "For both of us." It wasn't. The words hung between them heavy and raw. They sat in that silence, not running from it this time. Then, after a moment, Monica said, "The boys are doing a family project next week. They each have to bring a picture and talk about someone important to them." Calvin raised his eyebrows. "Are they choosing you? I assumed they would." "But Isaiah said something yesterday. He asked if he could bring a photo of you." Calvin blinked, stunned. I told him he could decide on his own, she added. But that's when I realized, it's not about whether I'm ready. It's about whether they are. He swallowed hard. I'll show up. Whatever role they give me, I'll show up. She nodded slowly. You better, she said softly. Because if you hurt them, I won't need to say anything. Their silence will say it all. Calvin looked at her then, not with the weight of guilt, but with the steadiness of a man trying every day to be better than he was yesterday. I won't let them down, he said. Just then, Noah ran up waving a paper in his hand. Mom, I got invited to join the art showcase at school. That's amazing, baby, Monica beamed. What are you going to display? My painting of the galaxy, the one with the sparkly stars. Mr. Calvin helped me pick the colors. Calvin smiled gently, resting a hand on Noah's shoulder. Noah looked up at him. Will you come to the show? Calvin crouched down to eye level. Wouldn't miss it. As Noah ran off again, Monica looked at Calvin. And something settled between them, not resolved, not finalized, but real. The past had a long shadow. But maybe they were finally learning how to walk through it, together. The Thursday of the art showcase arrived wrapped in spring air and soft nerves. Monica stood in front of the bathroom mirror trying to decide if her blouse was too formal. She'd already changed twice. The twins were dressed and impatient, Miles pacing like he was waiting for a big speech. Noah, unusually quiet, kept adjusting the sleeves of his button-down. You okay, baby? Monica asked, brushing a bit of lint from his shoulder. He nodded. Just nervous. You've got nothing to be nervous about, she said. Your painting's beautiful. Your teachers love you, and your brothers will scream your name whether you want them to or not. Noah cracked a small smile. And Mr. Calvin's coming, right? Monica paused. Yes, she said. He's already on his way. Noah nodded again and turned away, but she could see it in his eyes, the hope, the weight of it. He wasn't nervous about the art. He was nervous about Calvin. By 6:30, the school gym buzzed with families, teachers, and folding tables lined with little masterpieces, finger-painted suns, papier-mâché volcanoes, crayon self-portraits under words like brave and kind. Strings of fairy lights ran along the walls, giving the space a warm, gentle glow. Monica stood with the boys near Noah's painting, a swirl of blues, purples, and glittering white, the galaxy he'd worked on for weeks. It looked like wonder bottled up on a canvas. It's even better in this lighting, she said, genuinely impressed. Noah shrugged, trying to look humble. I added more stars yesterday. Good call. Then, just as she reached for her phone to take a photo, a hush seemed to fall over Noah's face. He wasn't looking at her anymore. Monica turned. Calvin had just walked in. He wasn't dressed like a man who had millions in the bank. He wore dark slacks and a soft olive-green sweater. But it wasn't the clothes, it was the way he carried himself. Relaxed, present, like a father, not a visitor. His eyes found them and a smile broke across his face. Hey, he said, waving. Miles and Isaiah lit up instantly, each grabbing one of his hands. But Noah stood still. Calvin knelt down, waiting. No words, no pressure. Then slowly Noah stepped forward and held out a folded piece of paper. Calvin opened it. It was a drawing, rough, colorful, honest. 2 figures under a big sun, one tall, one small. In the top corner, in blocky second-grade handwriting, my family. Calvin's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes shimmered. You drew us, he said, his voice low and unsteady. Noah nodded. I put it next to my painting. Calvin knelt again, pulled him into a hug. Thank you. This means more than you know. Monica watched it all from a few feet away, heart twisting in that way it always did when joy and ache showed up together. This was what she'd wanted for them, for her boys to feel seen, safe, and whole. She just hadn't expected the cost of letting her own guard down. A few minutes later, a woman approached the group with an oversized camera and a clipboard. "Family photos for the wall," she asked cheerfully. "We're doing keepsake shots for each student." Noah looked at Monica, then at Calvin. "Can we all do one together?" he asked. Her heart skipped. Calvin looked at her, waiting. She swallowed. "Sure." They gathered in front of the galaxy painting. The boys squeezed between them. Calvin's hand rested gently behind Noah. Monica smiled, real if uncertain. The camera clicked. After the photo, the crowd began to thin. A few parents lingered, chatting about summer plans and school field trips. Monica stepped outside for air, needing a break from the noise. She stood near the playground, the sun setting in streaks of orange behind the trees. A few minutes later, she heard footsteps behind her. "You okay?" Calvin asked. She nodded without turning. "Yeah, it's a lot." "I know." They stood in silence, side by side. "I saw the picture," he said quietly. "The one Noah drew. I don't think I've ever had a moment hit me that hard." "He trusts you," Monica said. "They all do. I don't take that lightly." She looked over at him. "What about you? What do you want out of this, Calvin? I know you love them. But this whole thing, you and me, what are you really reaching for?" He didn't answer right away. Then softly, "I want a second chance. Not just as their father, but as your partner. I know I can't erase what I did. I won't pretend like it didn't happen. But I'm not the man I was, Monica. And you're not the woman who had to walk away." Her eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. "I don't know how to trust this yet," she whispered. "I don't know if I can." "I'll wait," he said. She looked at him. "Don't say that unless you mean it." "I do," he replied. "Even if we never find our way back to that place, I'll wait. I'll keep showing up. I'll be the proof they need that people can change." She blinked hard, then looked away. "I need time," she said, "to figure out what this is, what it could be. You've got all the time you need." He reached out gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She didn't move away. Then the school doors opened again, and the boys spilled out, waving juice boxes and buzzing with end-of-night energy. "Mom, Mr. Calvin," Miles called. "They're giving out leftover cookies." Monica smiled, wiping at her eyes. "Go," she said to Calvin, "before they eat them all." He grinned and jogged over to the boys. Monica watched them, her sons and the man who might be learning how to love them the way they deserved all along. The night air settled warm around her. The stars would come out soon. And maybe so would the truth of what her heart still wanted. The rain started just before dawn, light at first, then steady. By the time Monica pulled into the lot behind the center, her windshield wipers were doing overtime, and the parking spaces were puddled with muddy water. She sat for a moment before turning off the ignition. Her hands rested on the wheel. A part of her didn't want to go inside. Not today. Because today wasn't about the boys. Today was about her. And Calvin. They had planned it 2 weeks ago, a quiet breakfast at Café Rue, away from the kids, away from the center, away from the distractions that made avoidance too easy. Just two people talking about what they hadn't dared say in years. She'd barely slept. Inside the center, Lena was already at the front desk, flipping through the new supply order. She glanced up, sensing something before Monica even spoke. "You okay? I will be Monica," said, offering a half smile. Lena tilted her head. "Is today the day breakfast not a proposal?" Monica said, trying to keep her tone light. "It's just a conversation." Lena nodded. "You're allowed to be nervous." "I'm not nervous, okay?" Lena smiled gently. "You're allowed to lie, too." Monica gave a soft laugh and walked down the hall to her office. but the quiet humor didn't settle the storm brewing inside her. By 8, she was walking toward Café Rue Umbrella, in hand coat collar, up against the chilly drizzle. The sky hung low, soft gray, stretching over Savannah like a wet wool blanket. She stepped inside, shaking off the rain, scanning the room. He was already there. Calvin sat by the window, 2 mugs on the table, his phone face down. When he saw her, he stood pulling out her chair before she even reached the table. "I wasn't sure if you'd come," he said. Monica sat down. "Neither was I." He nodded like he respected that answer. The server brought menus, but neither of them opened them. For a moment, they just sat watching each other through the lens of time, of change, of everything left unsaid. "You look tired," he said gently. She smirked. "That's just motherhood." "I know. I see it in you every time I see them." There was a pause. Calvin leaned forward. "Can I ask you something real?" She nodded. "If I had stayed, if I had fought harder back then, do you think we would have made it?" Monica looked down, fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "I think," she said, "slowly we would have tried, and maybe we still would have fallen apart. But at least I wouldn't have had to explain to 3 toddlers why their dad was just a name." Calvin's face tensed. "I was scared. Not of you. Of failing in front of you. And I was tired of being invisible to someone I loved," she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. He reached across the table, fingers brushing hers. She didn't pull away, but she didn't hold on either. "I think about it every day," he whispered. "What I lost. What I gave up without knowing I was doing it. We can't keep living in the what-ifs, Calvin. I'm not. I'm living in the now." She looked at him. Really looked. And for a flash, she saw it, not the man who walked away, but the one sitting in front of her now. Tired, honest, hopeful. "I care about you," she said quietly. "I do. But I need to know this isn't just about making peace with your past, that it's not just about guilt or the idea of us. I need to know it's about me. Now. Not who I was before everything broke. It is about you. It always has been. I just didn't know how to say it back then. I didn't know how to be still and choose what mattered most." Monica swallowed hard. "And if I don't choose you back, I'll still show up for the boys," he said. "Every game, every project, every moment, because this isn't conditional." That word conditional wrapped around her chest and squeezed. Outside, the rain had slowed. Inside, something softer had opened. "I don't have all the answers," she said, "but I don't want to keep closing the door out of fear." Calvin's voice was barely above a whisper. "Then leave it open. Just a little. I'll knock. I'll wait. Whatever it takes." And somehow that felt like the most honest thing either of them had said in 5 years. The server returned, clearing her throat gently. "Ready to order?" Monica looked at Calvin, her lips curving slowly. "Yeah," she said. "I think we are." Saturday morning came with the sound of tiny footsteps and cereal bowls clinking on the counter. Monica stood barefoot in the kitchen, sipping her coffee, her eyes following the 3 small bodies moving in their usual chaotic orbit. Miles asking where his green marker went, Isaiah wearing one sock and singing off-key Noah lost in a book at the breakfast table. It all felt normal. But beneath the rhythm of their routine was a hum she couldn't quiet. Something had shifted. Not overnight. Not with fireworks or declarations, but gradually like the tide creeping up the shore without you noticing until your feet are wet. Her phone buzzed. "Calvin. Got the picnic stuff. I'll be at the park around 11. Bring the chaos." She smiled before she could stop herself. Monica had agreed, hesitantly, carefully, to let him plan a full afternoon with the boys. Just them. No community center, no time constraints. Just food, a soccer ball, and sunlight. And at the last minute, she'd added herself to the guest list. By late morning, they arrived at Forsyth Park. The sun was warm, the kind of warmth that didn't demand anything from you. Calvin had already set up a blanket under the big oak near the fountain. There were sandwiches, lemonade, even little containers of sliced fruit with toothpicks stuck in them. Miles let out a victory scream and took off across the grass. "Wow," Monica said, as she approached, arms crossed with mock suspicion. "Fruit skewers, look at you," Calvin grinned. "Pinterest, don't judge me." She sat beside him, the boys already chasing each other with rolled-up sleeves and wild laughter. "They've changed," he said, watching them. "In just these past few weeks, it's like they carry themselves differently. They've always had that light," she said. "They just finally have someone else to see it." He glanced over. "I see it in you, too." Monica didn't look at him, but her silence didn't push him away either. After lunch, Calvin challenged them to a 3-on-1 soccer game, which dissolved into comedic chaos almost immediately. Monica laughed so hard she had to sit down, breathless, as Isaiah tried to score, using only his head. Later, while the boys explored the small garden nearby, Calvin returned to the blanket and handed her a folded napkin. "You're not proposing with a napkin, are you?" she teased. "Not quite." Inside the napkin was a small, glossy photo. It was the one from the art showcase. The 5 of them smiling. Natural. Real. He'd framed it. "I wasn't sure when to give this to you," he said. "But I figured today felt right." Monica held the frame in both hands, her throat tightening. "I used to imagine pictures like this," she said quietly. "But it always felt too far away, like something that belonged to someone else." He looked at her. And now she traced the edge of the frame. "Now it feels possible." Calvin's voice dropped. "Do you still love me, Monica?" She didn't flinch, but she didn't answer right away either. Instead, she set the photo down gently beside her and turned to him. "I never stopped loving the man I married," she said. "But I had to stop loving the man you became. To survive. For me. For them." He nodded slowly. "That makes sense." She searched his face. "And I don't know if we can go back. I don't even know if we should. But I do know that the way you show up now, it's different. It's honest. I'm not trying to recreate what we had," he said. "I'm hoping to build something new, with all the truth on the table this time." Monica let the words settle. Then softly, "I want to try." His eyes widened. "You mean that I want to try something. I don't know what it is yet. But I want us to be brave enough to figure it out." He didn't speak. He just reached for her hand and she let him take it. Not tightly. Not with urgency. Just held. In the distance, the boys screamed something about a butterfly, and Monica laughed, the sound rising with the breeze. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like pretending. It felt like the start of something real. The following week unfolded like a quiet song, familiar notes, but a new rhythm. The boys settled into a kind of peace that Monica hadn't realized was missing until it arrived. Their giggles came easier. Their sleep ran deeper. Even their little arguments ended faster, like they were carrying less weight. But inside Monica, something more complicated stirred. She was learning to breathe around Calvin again. Not in the way she used to, not breathless, not reckless, but with measured trust. Each conversation layered with care, each moment with the boys laced with small, wordless hopes. And yet that fragile peace also invited fear, because peace had always felt temporary in her life, like something beautiful that never stayed too long. That Friday, she stayed late at the community center to prep for a parent panel on mentorship. Calvin had offered to handle dinner and bedtime, which after some hesitation, she accepted. At 8:47 p.m., her phone buzzed. Calvin the twins are out. Noah's finishing a chapter. House still standing. I'll wait up if you want to talk. She stared at the message longer than she needed to. Then she typed back, I'll be there in 15. The drive to his place was quiet. Soft jazz played low on the radio, and the streetlights glowed like fireflies. When she pulled up his porch, light was on. The door cracked open before she even knocked. He smiled. Hey. She stepped in, hugging her coat tighter around her. The house smelled like lavender and something warm chamomile tea, maybe. A folded blanket sat on the couch. A half-finished drawing from Miles was taped to the fridge. It didn't feel like his place anymore. It felt like theirs. Monica sat on the edge of the couch, perching like she wasn't sure how long she'd stay. Calvin sat across from her, elbows on his knees. They were asking if we'd all go to the farmer's market this weekend. She raised an eyebrow. All of us? He nodded. Noah said he wants to show you the beeswax booth. She smiled softly. He remembers I like the candles. I think he's testing us, Calvin added. Like, seeing if we really mean it when we say we're okay. Monica looked down, her voice quieter now. Are we okay? I think we're getting there. He waited a beat, then added, unless something's changed. She didn't answer right away, her hands folded in her lap, fingers knotting slightly. I'm scared, she admitted. Not of you. Of how easy this is starting to feel, like we're skipping steps. He leaned back. You want to go slower? I want to be honest. With myself. With you. I still have moments where I flinch when the boys ask you something like you never left, and I wonder if I'm setting them up for another fall. I get that, he said, voice low. But I'm not leaving. You don't have to believe me yet. Just let me keep proving it. Her eyes met his, searching for cracks, for signs of the man who once chose silence over effort. But he didn't look away. I don't want to build a fantasy, she said. I want something solid, something real. So do I, he replied. And real means slow. Real means questions. Real means nights like this where nothing gets decided but everything gets said. That line hit something tender in her. She stood pacing a little. Then almost absently she asked, Do you think we're doing this for them or for us? Calvin tilted his head. Is it wrong if it's both? She turned to him. I want them to see love that stays, Calvin, not love that comes back because it missed what it broke. He stood closing the space between them but not touching her. Just near enough. And I want them to see love that grows, he said. That learns, that heals, that admits when it was wrong and chooses better. She blinked hard. You keep saying the right thing, she whispered. Because I'm not guessing anymore, he replied. I know what I want. Monica looked down. I want to believe in that, she said. But belief takes time. Calvin nodded. Then let's give it all the time it needs. A long silence followed. Then finally Monica stepped closer. Not all the way, just close enough that the air between them changed. She reached into her bag and pulled out a slim envelope. The parenting agreement. Unopened. She handed it to him. I think we're past this now, she said. If we're going to do this, it's not going to be with contracts and drafts. It's going to be with conversations. With showing up. Calvin took it, glanced at it, then set it down on the coffee table without a word. No ceremony, no big moment, just mutual understanding. Monica exhaled slowly. I should go. He nodded, but as she reached the door, she paused. Tomorrow, she said. The farmer's market. You're driving. He smiled. I'll bring coffee. And the boys want those cinnamon rolls. Of course. She gave him a long look, her hand on the doorframe. Then gently, so gently, she said, We'll see where this goes. And for the first time, it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like hope. The morning sunlight spilled across the kitchen floor, warm and golden, the kind of light that made everything look softer, like the start of something new. Monica stood at the counter packing snacks for the boys, while the smell of fresh coffee filled the room. She caught her reflection in the window above the sink. Tired eyes, hair pulled back in a quick bun. But something else too, a quiet calm she hadn't seen in herself for a long time. From the living room, the twins were arguing over who got to wear the blue sneakers. Noah, already dressed, sat at the table eating a banana, calm as ever. "Everyone ready?" Monica called. "No," Miles yelled. Isaiah took both left shoes. "You only have one left shoe, genius," Isaiah fired back. Monica shook her head, smiling to herself. 15 minutes later, they were loading into Calvin's SUV. He stepped out to open the door, tall coffee cups in one hand, a paper bag of cinnamon rolls in the other. "Morning, family," he said, handing Monica her cup like he'd done it 100 times. She took it, fingers brushing his. Still warm. "I'm impressed." "I'm evolving," he said with a grin. The boys piled in with all the energy of a sports team on game day, already hyped for the farmers' market. As they drove through the streets of Savannah, windows down, music playing low, Monica glanced over at Calvin. His hand rested easily on the wheel, the sun catching the edge of his jaw, his eyes scanning the road. It hit her quietly. This version of him wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to win her back with grand gestures. He was simply showing up. Present, consistent. And somehow that was everything. The market buzzed with life booths, filled with local honey handmade soaps produced in baskets that still smelled like earth. Calvin held Isaiah's hand while Monica kept an eye on the twins, the family moving like a unit. They passed a booth with soft music playing. A woman strummed an acoustic guitar, her voice airy and soulful. Monica stopped, drawn to the sound. Calvin leaned in. "Remember when we used to come here before the boys?" She smiled. "We didn't know how good we had it, just walking around on Saturdays without goldfish crackers in every pocket." He laughed. "You used to buy way too many candles, and you pretended you hated them, but I caught you lighting them every time you cooked." They shared a quiet look, the kind that lasted just a second too long. A breeze lifted Monica's curls as the music swelled. She looked out at the sea of strangers' families moving through the market like stories in motion. Then she said it soft, almost like a confession. "I missed this." Calvin didn't ask what she meant. He just nodded, his voice low. "Me too." Noah tugged at her hand. "Mom, can we get strawberries?" She smiled down at him. "Absolutely." At the booth, the vendor handed them a full carton. Monica offered cash, but Calvin beat her to it. "Let me get it," he said. She started to protest, but stopped. Letting him help, really letting him, was new. Hard, but necessary. Afterwards, they sat under a tree near the fountain, the boys feeding bits of bread to birds' juice boxes in hand. Monica sat with her knees drawn up, shoes off the grass, cool beneath her feet. Calvin leaned back on his elbows, eyes closed, sun on his face. "Did you ever think we'd be here?" he asked, eyes still shut. She looked at the boys before answering. "No, but I hoped." Calvin opened his eyes, turning to her. "Monica." She met his gaze. "I know you're still holding back, and I'm not rushing you, but if there's anything left you need me to say or ask, just tell me." She swallowed the question sitting heavy in her chest. "Why now, Calvin?" she asked, voice hushed. "Why come back after all this time?" He didn't hesitate. "Because I finally stopped running from the version of myself I was afraid to be. The man who stays, the man who apologizes, the man who doesn't need everything to be perfect to be present." Her heart thudded once. "Do you love me?" she asked. "Yes," he said without blinking. "And I'm learning to love you better than I ever did before." The boys laughed nearby, chasing each other in the grass. Monica watched them, her whole world in 3 little forms. Then she looked back at Calvin, and for the first time her walls didn't just lower. They opened. "You're coming over for dinner tonight," she said. He smiled slowly. "Yeah," she nodded. "Bring dessert. Any requests? Surprise me." And just like that, something inside her settled. Not completely. Not forever. But enough. Enough to start again. The late afternoon sun dipped low behind the tall oaks lining the neighborhood street, casting long, golden shadows across Monica's front yard. The air held that warm stillness only found at the end of a good day, quiet content, full of something unspoken. Inside the house, the boys were strewn across the living room floor, half asleep from too much running and too many cinnamon rolls. Isaiah had one sock on and a crayon in his hand, lazily drawing something on the back of a flyer. Miles was already out, curled like a cat under a throw blanket. Noah sat close by, flipping slowly through the pages of a space book Calvin had brought over weeks ago, the one with the big, fold-out galaxy map. Monica stood in the kitchen stirring a pot of creamy pasta on the stove. The windows were cracked open just enough to let in the scent of spring, damp earth, new blooms, the faint whisper of wind chimes from a neighbor's porch. She could hear Calvin's voice drifting in from the backyard, soft, steady, and warm. "You see that one up there," he was saying. "That's Orion. Those 3 stars in a row, that's his belt." Noah's voice followed, curious. "How do you know so much about stars?" Calvin chuckled. "Because your mom used to make me watch space documentaries every weekend. She was obsessed. She still is," Noah said. "She always points out the moon when it's full." Monica smiled quietly to herself. A few minutes later, Calvin came back in through the sliding door, his hair a little windswept, cheeks flushed with the chill of early evening. "The sky's turning pink," he said gently, setting his keys on the counter. "Like watercolor." Monica turned down the burner, wiping her hands on a dish towel. "I always forget how fast the day goes when it feels good," she said. Calvin leaned against the counter across from her eyes, tracing her face. "They're happy," he said. "It's obvious." "They are," she agreed. "They feel safe." He hesitated, then added, "I think you do too, at least a little more than before." She looked at him, really looked, and this time she didn't guard her expression. "I do," she said. "But it's not just about trust, Calvin. It's about choice, about knowing I'm not just falling back into something familiar because it feels warm." Calvin nodded slowly. "Then let's make new choices. Every day. Together. If that's still what you want." Monica took a breath, long and deliberate. "I want something real. Not perfect, not polished, just true. I want to argue about laundry and laugh about cartoons. I want to raise our boys with presents, not promises. I want love that shows up even when it's tired." "I'm already in it," he said gently. "All the way." She stepped closer, her voice softer now. "You know what scared me most?" He waited. "That they would love you faster than I forgave you," she said. His eyes shone. "Did they?" She gave a small, teary laugh. "They did." He reached for her hand, just a light touch. "And what about you? I'm getting there." Calvin nodded, his voice steady. "Then I'll keep walking beside you, no rush, no shortcuts." The pasta was ready. She plated it with roasted vegetables and set everything on the table as the boys dragged themselves up with sleepy grins and louder-than-necessary stories about bugs and clouds and garden statues that looked like frogs. Dinner was loud and messy juice. Spilled, someone burped, and Isaiah dropped his fork twice. But Monica didn't care. The house was full. Whole. There was nothing missing. After the boys were tucked in, Calvin lingered in the doorway of the twins' room, watching their chests rise and fall. "They're magic," he whispered. Monica stood beside him. "They're yours." He turned to her. "And you, I'm mine. she said firmly. "But I'm letting you walk with me now." They moved to the porch, letting the door click shut behind them. The stars had fully emerged, scattered across the velvet sky. Monica wrapped a blanket around her shoulders and sat beside him on the swing. "You remember that first night we moved into our old place?" she asked. "We didn't even have furniture yet, just one mattress on the floor and a lamp with no shade." Calvin laughed. "And that burnt mac and cheese you tried to pretend was gourmet. You ate every bite. I was in love." She looked at him. "And now I'm in love with everything I know now," he said. "With the woman who didn't wait to be saved, who built a world for 3 boys out of her own strength, who let me earn my way back in." She didn't say anything at first. Then quietly, "I never stopped loving you, Calvin. I just stopped expecting anything from you. And now I'm expecting us to keep choosing this, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." The porch swing creaked beneath them, and the silence that followed wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Real. He reached for her hand, fingers lacing easily with hers. "Then let's keep choosing." A breeze picked up, rustling the leaves above. The stars held their places. Inside the house was full of the kind of love that didn't need to shout to be heard. And out on the porch, beneath the night sky, 2 people sat, quietly, finally home. Lesson learned. Real love isn't about who never leaves. It's about who returns and stays with truth, with humility, and with open hands.